Good evening. And I think with that, we should be live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first Collector's Arc live. Yeah, so this is a little bit different. Normally, it's a pre-recorded thing that I do for this, but just hang on a moment. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. There we go. That's sorted. Right, where was I? Yes, the first Collector's Arc live. Yes, we are live now, and no more pre-recording. It's the first time we're live for the Collector's Archive, usually pre-recorded, and it's also the end of season 5 as well. It's the final episode, so why not? So before we start, I'll just do a little bit of housekeeping, just let you know how it's going to proceed, and I'll do a few quick chats up on the screen, and then we'll get into it because our guest is patiently waiting in the wings there, in the green room. So it's going to progress pretty much how the Collector's Archive usually progresses, but I have made some slight changes here and there to make it more befitting of the live medium, if you will. I will be monitoring the chat as we go along, but I won't be putting up any comments while we're doing like the talking. However, in the fourth quarter, shall we say, of the stream, I'm going to open it up to you guys. So there will be a bit of a Q&A session where I welcome you asking my guest questions, and if you so wish, you can ask me them as well. But I've probably already answered the questions you would ask anyway. So you're more than welcome to pop your questions in to Scott, and I'm sure he'll be kind enough to answer them. And I think, yeah, that's about it. So yeah, so I'll keep an eye on the chat, but I won't be popping them up. Later on, there'll be Q&A sessions, ask your questions, so save them up. And yeah, so with that, I'll just go quick through the chat, and then we'll crack on. So Andy's summoned. Gareth's saying hello. Josh is saying hello. Nice superhero landing. He's okay. I've no idea what that means. Yeah, apologies, Andy, that I didn't get to watch your video. I'll see it on catch up, but I was still prepping for this before we started. Martin's saying hello. He's actually live. Yes, I am actually live in the flesh. You hadn't realised, Andy. Well, I'd noticed that L, but sometimes he does curveballs. I do. I like a curveball. I like to be unpredictable. We have to be coherent. That's the debriefing. Yes, that's the debriefing. I'm caught up with the chat, so I think we should get started, don't you?
Welcome to the Collector's Arc Live, Season 5, Episode 8.
It works. Well, consider my gast flabbered, well and truly. So, without further ado, let's bring in Scott, shall we? Good evening, Scott. How are we, sir?
I'm good. It's good to see you. Thank you for this. I need to apologise before we start because you've been trying to get me to do this for a very long time, and I keep being very, very useless and bailing on you. On at least one occasion.
Yeah,
so
no, listen. Life happens. It's not an issue. So, but it's nice to have you here now. So, with that, Scott, if you'd just like to let people know your social media handle and where they can find you on the social media.
Yeah, so I am RedScavengerZoid on Instagram. There are a few posts there. You can find me on Facebook as well. There's a link from the Instagram. I'm not very, very active. I used to be a lot more active on threads back in the day around Zoid's Poison, things like that don't exist anymore, where I went by a couple of different names. But yeah, so this is something Zoids I've been doing for 25 years, but the Instagram stuff is something I'd much like to do. I'd like to do a lot more of.
And I believe you're also on Facebook as well.
Yes. Lufthuron is my tag on Facebook, which is a Warhammer 40k reference, if you've not heard that one. Again, not very active on there, bits and pieces. Been a bit more active on there the last few weeks, posting some of my other hobbies, but not a lot of Zoid, not a lot of Zoid action. Zoids for me is something that tends to happen in the winters.
Right then, so I think we should get into it, don't you? I'll just go down my list. So let's just remove that and that. So Scott, what do you collect?
I collect. I feel like I'm on like some sort of game show. Well, tonight,
yes,
tonight I collect. As you can see, I collect geological maps. But in addition to that, I also collect Zoids, but specifically what have become known as the OER Zoids. So the range of Zoids that if you are a similar vintage to me and yourself, you remember the Zoids from your childhood that used to fill shop displays everywhere and are now referred to as the original European release. So Zoids Zoids that were available in the UK and Europe, but I only found out about the Europe bit later, but in the UK from around about 1982 to maybe about 1982 to about 1988. Right. Of which there are officially 49 of them. Right. And my collection is probably in the 400 or 500s. So just by that, I've got duplicates upon duplicates upon duplicates of them.
So I find that quite interesting that, when you said there was 49, part of
you
me kind of
count about 10.
Yeah, well, no, what it was, it's kind of like, it kind of divided me because I thought, well, that doesn't sound a lot, but it also does sound a lot because as a kid growing up and seeing Zoids on the toy shelf, I never saw 49 Zoids. It was usually in toy shops when I saw a Zoid, it was usually all pretty much the same ones. So it'd have a couple of like the really early ones that look like, like stickle brick kind of Zoids, the really basic ones. Then you'd get, your usual like Scorpozoid, Spiderzoid, those kind of things thrown in, Red Horn, and then Zoidzilla. I mean, I can remember the first time I went into a shop and I saw a Gore, the Lord Protector, and I was like, what's that? I knew what Gore was, but I'd never actually seen him in the plastic, if you will, on a toy shelf. So yeah, the 49, that's kind of surprising and not surprising, but, in equal measure. But yeah, so that was the whole OER run, was it? 49 Zoids?
Yeah.
Right, right.
And they were a mix of Zoids that were created just for that range and repackaged Zoids from Japan.
Right.
So the full, I always get this wrong, but it starts off in about 82. Right. Tomy release 3 Zoids. Well, sorry, Tomy released 3 what we call Zoids, but they were called Mechabonicas. Right. And they were released. Similar sort of box art. They're released in Spain as Star Zeta. And if you come across a Star Zeta anywhere, buy one because they are absolutely priceless. They didn't do very well. And at the same time, they released them in, they released them in Europe and UK and Europe as Zoids. And they did all right. And so they repackaged them in Japan to copy the European packaging. And then it kind of rolled from there. And so the first couple of Zoids are all just repackaged. And then when they start selling the Zoids in Japan, some of them are in different colors. So they'll bring them over and they'll recolor them. Yeah. The box art in Europe is different, which is interesting. I think it's a lot. I like the European UK box art a lot better. And then, so they started off in Japan, and then they kind of go full circle. And I'm sure we can touch on this, but they seem to get manufactured in Japan, Singapore, various places in Europe and America. Although the OER stuff doesn't seem to be American, it was only the early ones that were American. And then they go full circle as their popularity wanes. Yeah. Tomy just started importing stuff from Japan in Japanese boxes, which is what those are, but I'll come back onto those in a bit. So that's where it comes from. And in the middle of that, I think from about 84 to about 86, I should have checked this beforehand, so I apologize. From about 84 to 86, Marvel get on board and they start doing the comic that we all remember as well. and
Yeah.
that was 52-ish episodes, and that should have gone on to be a monthly thing, but for various reasons that never happened. Apparently, Marvel in the States didn't like the way the story was going, apparently.
Yeah, I still phone my local newsagent every week asking, you know, when my copy of Zoid's monthlies, if it's arrived yet or not. Sadly, every week he tells me no. He tells me no. But right, no. So yeah, we've covered that. Right, we'll move on to the next one, which is when did collecting become a thing for you? Then you know, were there particular circumstances that preceded that? And what was the figure that did it as well? So there's 3 parts there.
Yeah. Well, I'll answer the last one first. It wasn't a figure. My entire Zoid collection over 20 odd years essentially is 50% nostalgia trip and 50% guilt trip. So when I sort of got to early teens, I discovered wargaming, specifically the Games Workshop stuff. A lot of people did.
Yeah.
And back in the day with that sort of Games Workshop, it was very much open to you, because it was still a fledgling company. They were very much open to you creating your own models to use in the games and things like this. And they got some particularly talented people that worked for them who thought nothing of getting Zoid kits, chopping them up, gluing them back together, and completely repurposing them. So I come from a fairly humble background, so I hadn't got a lot of money as a kid, so I couldn't buy stuff. So I thought, right, I'll start doing this. So I started chopping up Zoids, and you know, had games with them. That's a whole different story. And then when I left uni, sort of early 2000s, I remember finding this box in my mum and dad's loft full of what remained of my initial Zoid collection. And I just felt, because I loved them to bits as a kid. I spent Sundays and Saturdays taking them apart, very rarely actually playing with them. I think when I was a kid, my real interest in them was taking them apart and putting them back together, which I think is probably why I became interested in engineering later on in life. So I find this big box, it's full of bits, some painted, some cut up, and I just felt horrifically guilty that I'd kind of destroyed my own childhood. And that was about the time that eBay was just getting going. And at the time, you could just buy bags of bits, and you know, really big bags of bits for 15, 20 quid. The sort of stuff now that you see on eBay for over 100 quid. And there'd just obviously be people trawling car boot sales, coming back with Tesco carrier bags full of bits, and I'd just buy them. And so I started building them and putting them all back together, and that's where it came from. And then I got, again, fledgling internet, really. I came across a couple of forum pages. And I'd already been collecting for a couple of years at this point, and all I was trying to do at that point was just get one of everything complete. Didn't really care, just buy the bits, put them together, wasn't a problem. And I bought a few and sold a few to keep paying for it, to keep it going. And then I got on this forum, that Zoid's Poison forum. I don't know if any of your people who are watching are familiar or were familiar with it. And it became apparent that a few people in the UK, in Europe and in America had realized that just because you got 2 of the same Zoids out of a box, the parts were different, because the way Japan or Tomy had sent the molds around the world to manufacture them, you'd start to get variations in the molds. And so then I became part of a very small group of people who tried to start figuring out the variances in the molds. And then you start to realize, and that opened up a rabbit hole. And I realized that for years I'd been, in inverted commas, doing it wrong. And I'd been collecting them, putting them together when really I shouldn't have been. And it explained why some of the parts off the same Zoid didn't fit very well. I'd always assumed that when parts didn't fit very well, it was because they hadn't been played with. And when parts were loose, it was because they'd been played to death. And no, it's not. It's because of these variances in the molds. And that's just opened up just a whole world of pain for me. Because now I spend hours and hours trawling the internet for particular Zoids, taking them apart, figuring out where they come, getting confident that they're from one collection that hasn't been mixed up, taking them apart and trying to work out the differences in them. And so that's where I'm trying to get to now as a collector, is a point where I've got a record of all of the differences of all of the OER Zoids, which is why I've got so many of them. Right. So I've got parts that I'm not sure of, parts I'm trying to put back together. And it's become, it's whimsical and stupid and silly, but I enjoy it.
So I'm a bit, sorry, I'll just interject there, because I just want to pick up a point you meant there. sorry, when you say about that the parts don't quite fit,
Yeah.
so like, so you're talking about the OER and the, is it OJS?
No.
OGR? Because what I'm trying to figure out is if is it because are they not actually made from the same molds then?
No, I don't know. This is where we got to. So we think, or it's almost certain that the original Zoids were Japanese molds.
Right.
So they start making OER Zoids in Japanese molds, and they start selling them in Europe. Popularity increases. This is all supposition. Popularity increases. They can't keep up with production for whatever other reasons. They move some production to Singapore.
Right.
You've then got boxes, so you'll get the same box. It looks exactly the same on the instruction sheet. On the back of the box, it'll say "Made in Singapore." Somewhere on the Zoid, it'll probably say "Made in Singapore" or "Made in Japan." So then you've got two variances of every Zoid that you can find, and that's problematic in itself. But then we think that there was certainly a production run, a very limited production run in France. So you get the same Zoids stamped "Made in France," and they're slightly different. And these differences, they start right the way through the range. So fundamentally, slightly different color plastic.
Okay.
So the red Zoids. So obviously there's two factions. There's the good guys who are the blue Zoids, the bad guys who are the red Zoids. Nice and simple. Japanese red Zoids have got slightly different red and shiny silver plastic to the Singapore versions. The caps, the little rubber caps, they're all different. So if you imagine if you buy a carrier bag full of Zoid bits, to work out which caps are supposed to go with Zoid, you've got to look at every single cap. And my eyes have gone now, so I end up doing that with a magnifying glass. But there are certain little marks and indentations on the rubber cap, so you can tell which country those are from. The bigger caps of the bigger Zoids, they're actually, if you really look at them, they're slightly different sizes, which is why sometimes if you put some of the bigger caps, the grey caps are quite good for this. If you put, I can't remember which way around, but if you put one of the grey caps on the wrong Zoid, they'll pop off because they don't quite seat on properly.
Right.
So that's one. The box art is, sorry, the made in on the back of the box is slightly different. The big battery powered Zoids, the little electrical connectors, they're different colours. They're either, I get this wrong, they're silver or gold, depending on if they're Japanese or Singapore. And we've also not figured out quite, we think that the molds in France were the Singapore molds with the country of origin changed.
Right.
The screws that hold the battery, it's just a complete rabbit hole. The screws that hold them all together, they're different colours. And then on the inside of the Zoid parts, the parts you can't see when they're built, the detailing is very different. And one of the best tells I've figured out, which is quite common across, especially the bigger ones, is the font used for the part numbers is different. So in one of the countries, I've got all this written down. I'm sorry I could, if we were sitting down reading through my notes, I could tell you. But on one of the countries, the font is quite rounded, and on the other country, it's a very angular font. So that's quite easy. So if you get letters like 3 and 2 and 7, it's quite, you can sort through those quite quickly because you can see instantly where they're from.
Yeah.
And so that's where it comes from. And so that's why it became this real obsession. And I'm probably halfway through. When we started, we were looking back sort of 20 odd years ago. There was a French guy, I don't know if he still collects, a guy called Lionel, and he was probably one of the first to pick up on this. And he really spent a lot of time on it. And he picked sort of the big things out. Like I remember him saying the big cannon on Gore. He said, oh, it's a different colour silver. So we all worked that out. And then we worked out that all of the silver was a different colour. And then it started applying to other Zoids. And so whenever I try and sell a Zoid, because I do still sell them, I always try and state, this is, when I say this is complete, I mean it's complete. This is as close as it could have got to have coming out the box with the original parts. Because some of the variances, once you've put them together, you can't get them apart without breaking them, which is a shame. And they're so they're terribly fragile anyway.
Yeah.
How we ever played with them as a kid is beyond me.
Well, yeah, I mean, we debated that the other day when we chatted about about this, like how as a kid we played with them so robustly and nothing happened for the most part, but then as adults you breathe on them and they just disintegrate.
I thought that today when I was putting it, because this is where I normally work, so I haven't normally got all this behind me. Just putting these out, I was terrified
Yeah.
So fragile.
So you have to excuse me, Scott, because I'm still trying to. My sort of like technical engineering mind is still trying to get its head round this thing. So, what we're saying then on this kind of subject, it's a case of the moldings that Singapore and France were using were, I don't know, microns out size wise, so there would be fitting issues.
Yes, that's definitely one of them. And I for many years, I've wanted to talk to somebody from I've even written to Tomy and said, is there anybody I could talk to about this? And I think they saw me for the nut I actually am about the subject and didn't respond. So
Right.
that would explain some of it. And so would I'm not a mold expert, but I do understand that the principle of how you copy one mold to the other. So that explains some of the differences. But it's interesting that, I mean, the prime example of the big ones, the interior detail is very, very different. And I don't know why that is. I mean, if one of your viewers knows anything about copying molds on a sort of, industrial scale, not sort of resin stuff you do in the garage, the differences on the back are really marked. And I'm intrigued to why that is. And there's thicknesses. So again, I know that you get generational change if you copy one mold from another. So the Singapore gore, again, the main body is the big motor that we all remember, and then two halves clamped over it. The plastic on the Singapore one is really thin compared to the Japanese one, and it breaks a lot. So to get a gore, it's where the big cannons on the back mount. If you can find a gore where the mounts for that cannon are still intact, that's quite good going. I've got boxes full of just broken bits where they've snapped and they've cracked off.
Yeah, because I mean the dyes that they use for the molding process. I mean, I know from my transformer knowledge, over time they will deteriorate and they'll become unusable. I mean, that's why you never saw any reissues of characters like Mirage or Wheeljack and the Dinobots.
Yeah,
because the molds had just become, unusable.
Yeah.
So they've obviously, at this point, had Japan stop manufacturing when
I have no idea. This is it. I mean, I've pretty much told you everything other than getting into the detail of the actual parts. In terms of the process and what happened, that's all I know.
Right.
What I haven't done, and I only thought about this this morning actually when I was thinking about tonight, is there are some of the Zoids that were in the OER range that then were reissued in the 1990s.
Yeah.
Not many, because they fundamentally started to change in the design, but things like what we know as Slitherzoid.
Yeah.
That seems to be really popular. So that as a toy as a Zoid you could buy has always been in the Zoid range. What I've not done, which I might do just for fun now, is try and obtain one of those more recent ones and try and look at any mold difference between that and the ones I've got to see if it, I mean, is it? I can't assume it's the same molds after the better part of 40 odd years.
No.
But yeah, that's it. That's where we've got to. But fundamentally, for me as a collector, it's about just because you've got two Crocs and they say, and they arrive from eBay or wherever you've got them from complete.
Yeah.
Do you trust them, or do you have to start looking at the bits? And for a lot of people, it doesn't matter, does it? It's you just want them. They just look so good sitting on shelves.
Yeah. But that's the thing. So I mean, so you could end up having a bit of a FrankenZoid.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yourself,
yeah,
because it's made up of 2 or 3 different.
And if anybody bought one off me,
points,
anywhere between about 2001, 2005, I can almost, especially if you've got one of the big ones, I can almost guarantee that the parts are going to be mixed on it, which I feel horrifically guilty about now.
So I mean, I suppose that would also go some way to explain why we've not really seen any, recent reissues then of them. I mean, I'm assuming that the molds are now maybe gone, or just
I don't know. Well, they wouldn't pass it. They wouldn't pass any toy tests, would they? Now, things like the drop test that they have to put Transformers through. Now, if you drop one of these on the floor, that's it, game over.
Right. But I mean, I suppose if they were sold as a model rather than a toy, maybe that would be a way.
Well,
what's the name of the company now? I keep forgetting the name of the company that produced the Zoid models.
You mean the more recent models?
Yeah.
Koto Boyaka, or however you. I apologise.
Yeah, they do like the Zoid kits. Yeah. And they're quite articulated as well.
I've got quite a few of those. I mean,
they're not motorised or anything.
Yeah. that's something I have started collecting. I've started collecting the kit ones that had a Zoid that was in the original OER. And because I'm still quite into wargaming and modelling and painting, I've started repainting them as the original OERs. But there's some people on Instagram that do fabulous stuff. A guy called Lord Nerdington, if you found him on Instagram.
Yes, I've spoken to Lord Nerdington. Yeah,
super stuff, really super stuff.
Yeah. Right. So where were we with the question? So that's what's brought you back to it. So what year did this start happening then? Where about
2001, 2002. So just at the point where eBay was still cheap.
Yeah. So that's when the guilt kicked in and the nostalgia, and it was like, right, full circle. Would you be able to tell me what was the first one you bought or that you got?
I don't know, to be honest. I probably bought. I remember buying quite a few, just as I said, carrier bags that had obviously been found on car boot sales. What I did get actually fairly early on is that, which at the time I didn't. I've had that one for over 20 years now. So that's Shield Tiger. It was one of the last two. So those are the last two motorized Zoids that were part of the OER. I didn't realise when I got him quite how rare he is, especially with a box.
Yeah.
I've only ever seen two. So there's. I'm distracting myself. But the holy grail for a lot of Zoid collectors is 49 Zoids, new, in box, unbuilt, sealed.
Right.
Good luck with that, because that's not going to be a cheap hobby, basically. But I've only ever seen two of those in boxes. Sorry, three including that one. But I got that one because I got talking to a very nice lady on eBay who's selling a few Zoids, and I bought 4 or 5 off her. And she said, "Oh, I've got a whole box of these. Do you want them?" And I said, "Yeah, go on then." And she said, "Well, if you give me about 20 quid, you can have the lot." And they turned up, and he was in it, complete, immaculate, built, not on the sprues, but mint. And I had to phone her back up and say, "I've got to send you some more money, because this just, it's not enough. You've got no idea what you sent me here. I can't afford to pay you what it's probably worth, but I can give you some more money." So he was quite special when I got him. But right at the start, I did dabble with buying some of the big Japanese ones, so Mad Thunder, Deathsaurus, things like that. But this has led to madness. So if I'd have just started buying any Zoid, I think I'd have just been in real trouble. At the minute, I haven't got anywhere to display them anyway. But that would have been a problem. So probably just a bag full of Zoids. Yeah. See where I could go with it.
Right. Good stuff. Is there anything new that you've just got that you can talk about or show us?
I've got a tarantula on the way.
Yeah.
And every now and again, surprisingly, actually, every now and again you get something like this. So he's all here. So this is a croc. This is the crocodile. Right. And it's amazing over the years how many half-built Zoids I've got.
Right.
I don't quite understand the logic. It's almost as if somebody decided, sort of 20 minutes into trying to put one together, that it was too complicated and gave up with it. So I've got, this was a bag that came the other day. Nothing's happened with that yet. So there's
I mean, wouldn't it be really cool?
Sorry?
Wouldn't it be really cool? I'm just saying, wouldn't it be really cool if you could, just for your own purposes and your own collection, reattach the parts to the sprue?
Well, I'm convinced this is where we're going with scanning technology and 3D printing. I don't think that's impossible, to be honest.
No.
Well, certainly making your own sprues up, I think, would be fairly easy.
Yeah.
And I'm
so sorry. Yeah. So the croc. What was the other one you was going to show?
There was a croc. So this is an example of what you get when you go randomly hunting. So I've got 3 sprues and a few bits of a croc.
Yeah.
I've got a sprue with 2 different guns on off another Zoid, just on their own. Scorpio Zoid. Maybe there's most of a Scorpio Zoid here. That's probably off one of you were talking about the very early ones that were a bit janky.
Yeah.
So I think I know what sprue that is, but given that bit is in it as well. So that is a head gun off a Stegozoid to make it look like an AT-AT walking tank from Star Wars.
Right.
And then randomly you'll get bits and you'll just think, oh, there was absolute gold dust in their collection. So that's a bit of a red horn. That's a bit of a red horn.
Yeah.
That is amazing. That bit, that's quite a good bit to find. That is the bottom cannon. Oh, he says this is falling apart. Off one of my favourite Zoids. So he's quite late.
Right. That looks nice. I like
that.
that.
He's quite a late one. That is off him, isn't it? I think. Yeah. So that's the cannon from underneath him.
Right.
So that bit.
Yeah.
Is that bit. So he's a Cyberdon. So he's one of the last ones. So that turned up the other day after I spoke to you last week.
Yeah.
For the viewers' benefit, we were talking about the comic. So I love the comic. Yeah. And I said I'd got a full run apart from one issue. I'd got the issue, but the free stick of it. So the first issue of the comics came with a poster. The poster was quite clever in that it had got big white cutouts on it where there should be Zoids. And then you bought the next few issues and you stuck them on and you ended up with a picture of it was one of the promotional pictures and they'd done something in whatever was Photoshop before it was Photoshop. And I said to you, I've got the issue, I've got a couple of copies of the issue, but I've not got the sticker. Well, after we finished talking, when we were talking about doing this last week, I just, for fun, trawled eBay. And it was sitting there. So I went, right, I'm buying it. So it came. So I finally, I think I've got 2 more things to get to complete the full run of the original series with all the special gifts that they came with. So that's quite exciting. I don't think I've got anything else coming at the minute.
No. And is there anything? So that's what you've come in. Is there anything? Sorry, did you say is there anything that's due into you yet, or are you pretty much up to date?
I'm up to date at the minute. I'm definitely up to date if my wife's asking.
Yeah, I know that one. What would you like to pick up though? If you this one, sorry.
Go on, sorry.
I'm just saying, if you could find it and pick it up, what would be the one that you'd like to be able to pick up?
It's not a Zoid. You mean like a Grail piece for the collection?
Yeah, maybe. Or well, I mean, it could be a Zoid, or if you want to, well, tell you what, go with both. Tell us a Zoid you like.
Well, it is a Zoid. There's one thing that I tried to buy, probably 4 or 5 years ago that I lost out on. Because at the time I wasn't prepared to pay what it went for. In hindsight, it didn't actually go for a lot of money. It went for about 70 quid. Right. And it was a promotional standee piece of artwork out of a shop from probably the 83-ish wave. Fantastic artwork, not quite in the Marvel style, but just about that big sort of thing. And I was gutted that I missed out on that. And then I was watching an episode of Toy Shop on Tour, the boys from Leicester, and they went round to somebody's house and this piece of artwork was in their collection. And I've only ever seen one of those. And this guy said, oh yeah, I won it off eBay fairly recently. So I'm convinced he bid against me for that piece. But stuff like kind of, that's where I've got to now. I've got a lot of a backlog of parts that I need to sort through, but I think it's where everybody gets to with collecting, isn't it? You reach a point and suddenly you start going off on random tangents of ephemera. I've got 4 or 5 different pin badges just sitting in a plastic bag with the rest of it. I've seen Zoidzilla live. I mean, what was that from? The big guy in a suit that looked like Zoid. Well, there's something else. Where's the Zoidzilla suit from 1983? I'll buy that if that's on internet. A Zoidzilla suit. Well, there was a pin badge that said, "I've seen Zoidzilla live." Now, I remember as a kid going down to my local Jolly Green Giant because Mum Ra was going to be there from Thundercats. Right. And I remember being horrifically disappointed at this terrible suit they got this bloke in. So I'm assuming somebody else had a similar experience with a guy dressed in probably what looked half like a chicken, half like a rotting Grimlock that was supposed to be Zoidzilla. So, things like that you don't see. So,
unless it was unless it was the ultimate letdown and they went to this toy shop thinking they were going to see Zoidzilla live, and it's just the toy on the table walking backwards and forwards.
Could have been. It was the 80s. We had lower expectations.
Well, we did, yeah, we did. So, so was that your Grail piece, or was that just just something
that's kind of the Grail piece, I think.
Yeah.
A piece I'd like to collect right now would be going back to the kit versions, the Kato Boyik or whatever they are. There's a Zoidzilla that they do, which is massive. And I'd quite like to get my hands on one of those and repaint him in the OER colours, which I know a few people have done very well. So that's probably on my list at the minute for looking at. But I'm always on the lookout for random lots on eBay when people have got no idea what they're getting rid of, or it's amazing how many lots sell that have got really good bits in them, but sell just because it looks like somebody's just end tipped a plastic bag and you can't see what's there. So those are always good lots, and it's a lot of fun going through them. You can waste a few evenings really easily. You spend 30 or 40 quid on a bag of bits and you can go through them.
So are you at the stage now then, after your many years of Zoid exploration, that you can identify parts and what Zoid to go to just by
from the OER I can, and equally by default, if I don't know it, it's probably not an OER part.
Right.
So
we're gonna circle back.
You're
now.
not going to start pulling bits out, are you, and start saying what's that?
No. What I mean is, no. We'll circle. I do want to talk more about Zoids and things like that. So, which I mean, we're going to talk about. I want to try and get a bit more in depth with it. But we'll get my boring stuff out of the way with my boring questions, and then we can get into the meatier stuff. Is there a particular piece? And I know you mentioned that at the moment a lot of it is packed away, and you don't get to display it. But the bits that you do get to display, or is the one piece that you're currently enamored with? Yeah, it's sort of like you're always picking it up and having a fiddle about with it, or it might be always on your desk, so you can just look at it while you're working and things.
I've got the way. I mean, I've only lived in this house a very short time, so I've got to redecorate this room. But at the minute, what I've got is, as you can see, sort of, it looks like I might be half decently academic behind me, but in front of me are shelves. So I've got some huge Dinobot posters, a load of Warhammer figures lined up, some Battle Beasts sitting on a shelf, and then I tend to have. I'm a geologist by trade, by training, and part of that comes a love of Stegosauruses. So there tends to be Gorgon is always sitting around.
Yeah.
As much as I like Zoidzilla, having him displayed like that, just waiting for his tail to snap off, keeps me awake at night. So he tends to. Zoidzillas tend to stay in boxes, but I do like Redhorn. I've got a soft spot for Redhorn because obviously he was the antagonist in the comics, but he's so small. When you put him next to the other big Zoids, he's such a small Zoid. He just looks. Yeah. He just looks angry all the time. I think he's great. There was one of the storylines in the comic with Redhorn was that he was originally a blue Zoid. I don't know if you remember this, and he was force mutated. Long story. Anyway, he was blue. I'd love a blue one of him. That'd be great. I think the Japanese line had a blue one, which I've never tried to get, but if I could, I'd find a blue one of him, which is quite good.
Yeah, I have seen online the different color variations that Redhorn has been produced in. They did a black one as well. The black one looks really nice.
They did a clear one. You like clear stuff, don't you?
Yeah, I do have a penchant for translucent plastic. Yeah,
they did a clear one.
As much as I love translucent plastic, translucent Zoids are not something I touch with a barge pole. Not because I don't like them, but just because I wouldn't want them to disintegrate. It's translucent plastic in some respects, and also gold chromed plastic or gold plastic, brown plastic. They tend to be quite brittle. I never had Redhorn as a kid. So when I did actually finally get him as an adult collector, that was my first thing, was how small he was. I thought, this is smaller than what... It probably would have looked bigger when I was a kid, because Zoidzilla was huge when I was a kid. Now he's kind of like, he's still big, but he's not as big. But then Redhorn, I got him built up and I was like, he's evil, but he's very cute. It's not like, you know, you can't. It's like you can't stay mad with him because he's just so cute. But I love it. And especially that green, translucent visor, if you will. You know, the cockpit. That I love that combination. The green and also I promise the next time I do build him up, I'll build him correctly, because you did point out that I built him wrong.
Oh yeah, you've got the legs on backwards. Yeah.
I had the front legs on backwards, didn't I? But so yeah, I can understand you liking Redhorn. I do like Redhorn, and I also think as well that me personally, I prefer like the dinosaur based Zoids, or like insect, you know, like the Scorpozoid and the Tarantulon and stuff, like, you know, spiders. You know, I like those. I'm not over keen on the later ones. You know, when they started going, you know, I mentioned this when we spoke last time. I'm always dismayed by the fact that when you do a search for Zoids on Google, you just get page after page of Liga Zero, and it's just like there's more to Zoids than that. But anyway, so that's what you're enamored with. Okay, Scott. I'll double barrel this one. You're on a desert island. What toy are you going to take with you? And then when you get home from the desert island, you find that your house is burning down. What toy are you going to go run in and save? Both of which I hope never happen.
Honestly, I think the desert island. I'm gonna break away from Zoids. As I said earlier, I love a robot dinosaur. I'm a big fan of Stegosauruses, and I'll argue with anybody that the best robot Stegosaurus is Snarl. And I've got the Studio 86 Snarl somewhere. He's standing over there, actually. And he's just awesome. So Desert Island would be Snarl, and he's quite robust. There's no point taking a Zoid. I wouldn't want to have a Zoid on a beach, because I'd just get really upset, because you'd lose something instantly. You'd lose a cap, you'd lose the little pilot figure, a bit of drop off. It'd be really upsetting. So I think I'll just go and sit next to a campfire with Snarl.
Yeah.
And then
what toy are you saving?
What toy am I saving? Oh, that is a Zoid. So I picked up from one of the NEC toy fairs maybe about 18 months ago. It is a reissue, but it's it's Mammoth. So Mammoth was one of the red Zoids in his original Japanese colours, which were blue. So as I said, I don't know, and he's unbuilt. He's completely new, on sprues, in a seal box. I wouldn't normally collect the non-OER range, but that particular Mammoth, as anybody knows that read the comic, in the comic, whether they knew it or it was just a coincidence, I've never found this out. But one of the storylines in the comic was that there was a blue Mammoth who became traitorous and transferred to the Red Zoid. So in the comic, there was a blue Mammoth as well as the red Mammoth, and so I was really pleased to pick him up. So he's probably my favourite piece. And yeah, he horrified my wife when I said how much I paid for that. But,
right. So that's the blue Mammoth then.
Yeah, that's the blue Mammoth. He's probably only about 15, 17 years old. He's not that old at all as a actual physical thing, because it was a reissue in Japan and it came with a lot of other paraphernalia. But I just got hold of the Mammoth itself in the box.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I did like that. That was one of the things about the comics that I remember. You know, when you're talking about, you know, the traitorous and the fact that Red Mammoth used to be a good guy, and it was, you know, to say that the comic really, because the Zoids were just. The Zoids themselves weren't the character. They weren't a character. They were a vehicle, a mech, or whatever you want to call them. It was the pilots that was kind of like the characters. But the thought of that whoever piloted Mammoth went and swapped sides and said, "Oh, we just give him a quick spray job. We might as well spray him red now while I'm here." You know? And I think was it the Crack? What Crack's a different.
Crack was an interesting. I mean, we should say, you know, the Zoids are great, but the guys at Marvel did a really good job with the comic, because you know, it's just random, isn't it? It's an alien. The setting. It's an alien planet, and there's monster robots that look like animals from Earth, and just how they managed to. I suppose you suspend disbelief when you're 7, but I think they did wonders with it. But Crack was So Krark, Prince of Darkness, was one of the Zoids who came from the Blue Moon, which is where all the Red Zoids came from. And he had this vision of a reunited Zoid army that was going to go and conquer the galaxy. So it was a very clever way of adding in another faction. So you've got the red, the blue, and then you've got this faction under Krark that was a mix of various traitors from both sides, some of his own Zoids. And where that could have gone was really quite clever. And in one of the comic episodes, they happened to come across, I think it's a whole manufacture, it's a whole factory manufacturing Krarks.
Yeah.
You know, and the context of what would have happened. So yeah, I think the comic was brilliant. It was a real thing.
Yeah, because I think, if I remember rightly, I mean, I have the comics, and you know, I have the scans and stuff like that as well as the physical comics. And it is a while since I've read them, but I'm pretty sure the story actually did explain why they looked like Earth-based animals in some way, some shape or form. Was it something to do with that human visitors had visited Zoid Star at some point in the past? Or...
I'm never too sure on that, because there is a couple of panels where one of the characters who's he's burning up with a fever because he's been bitten by one of the Zoids and survived somehow or something like that. I can't remember. And he's having a fever dream, and he remembers that when he was younger he was on an alien planet, and the alien planet looks very Egyptian, and he goes into a tomb, and in the tomb there's a cosmozoid, or the remains of a cosmozoid. So maybe they were trying to bring that out. But yeah, it was, yeah. I think there's something on that in one of them in the annual as well, about where they got the design from. But yeah, it's fabulous stuff, all good stuff.
It is, yeah, it is. So we've covered We've covered your desert island. We've covered your burning house. You've told us your favourite piece. You've touched on it briefly as we've been chatting. But do you want to just tell us a bit more about, you know, these other interests that you've got outside of Zoids?
I foolishly started collecting battle beasts, which I'm trying to stop, because that's obviously a road to ruin lines ahead with that. I do a lot of sort of wargaming stuff. I don't really play as much. We've got a few of us play at work, so we've got a bit of a league going. But the other thing I've started getting into, I've always painted model spaceships. I've always had an affinity to stuff like Star Trek, Star Wars. And the older I've got, the more I've got into replicating the studio scale things. So as an example, I don't know, I didn't show you that. So do you remember Terrorhawks?
I do remember Terrorhawks, yes.
So he was a model. That's a model. I completely made that. He's from...
Yeah, I'm just trying to say, you scratch built that, didn't you?
Yeah, I scratch built that. So the base of that is only the base and the tracks is a Tamiya Leopard. So in Terror, I'm going off on one here. In Terrorhawks, the battle tank they had a couple of models. One was built on a Tamiya 1/16th tank chassis, which is about this big.
Yeah.
That was the one you see rolling around everywhere. And then for the shots of Battlehawk dropping out of one of the other Terrorhawks, they had one of those built. So that is what they had at the scale they had. And I've painted, that is really shaky. If you look at that close up, it looks quite shoddy, but it was, I intended it to look shoddy because the one that they used in the show close up when it was sold at auction that went for like $3,000 or something stupid, that looked quite shoddy. So that was the idea there. So I've got into trying to replicate some of these props, and now I've gone down a whole different line of studio scale Star Wars models, which is an interesting little hobby, which is why I'm trying to get into 3D printing. And from the 3D printing, there's some things I want to do with the Zoids. I'm convinced that there's a way of making something to repair. You know, all the clips on the big Zoids, they always snap. I reckon there's ways of designing something that would hold all that together so that they will display better if you've got a broken Zoid. But there you go. So that's the other stuff I do.
Right. I mean, if people are interested, they can visit your Instagram page because you've got photos.
Yeah, there's bits on there. Yeah.
Of the battle tank, and also I think if I remember rightly, there's photos of the process as well. So like in the various stages of building it.
I don't know how well the toy collecting and modelling hobbies cross over, but I'm on the RPF forum as well, which is an American prop making forum. So that's something I quite enjoy doing that. but it all comes down to engineering, doing things. I think it's why I like the Zoids.
And also, like you say, there's an honourable mention. You said there's a couple of Transformers that have wheedled the way into your collection as well.
Yeah, so favourite Transformer, beyond Prime and the Dinobots, obviously. I've got a real soft spot for Beachcomber because I'm a geologist. And obviously, with Beachcomber being a geologist. So I've seen the new one of him that's coming out, so he might have to get purchased.
Right.
I've got my old G1 collection, and then I'm slowly working my way through getting the Studio 86 Dinobots. But I will draw a line at that because I can't afford to go down another toy collecting hobby.
No. I'm with you on.
I've always got a soft spot for a Devastator. I've had a couple of the knockoff Devastators and sold them a couple of times over the last few years. Mainly because I get it. They're amazing, and then you realise how big they are. And trying to have them, I had one sitting behind a monitor, kind of climbing over my monitor for quite a few months. But I felt he'd probably got a better home. Somebody that would appreciate him a bit more.
Right. Oh, that's good to know. I might be able to help you out there if you're wanting another Devastator. There's one currently on my sales pile, the Toy World Constructor.
Okay.
He's just over 2 foot tall when he's combined.
Good God.
He's a huge thing. He is a huge thing. But there we go. Anyway, that's not why we're here. Okay, so we're going to time travel a bit now, Scott. We're going to go back into the past, and I'm going to ask you about toys, games, that you played as, the toys you played with as a child, and if there were any particular favourites that stand out in your memory.
Yeah. Oh, right. There was a whole range of games. I don't even know how old I would have been. Waddington's games that were kind of all of a similar style. And I've still got. Well, I say I've still got it. I'm pretty certain it's still in my parents' loft. But there's the was it Escape from Land of the Dinosaurs? There's a theme here. Escape from Land of the Dinosaurs. You built a volcano. Lava came out.
It's called Lost Valley of the Dinosaurs.
That one. That's it.
I have it.
That was great.
Yeah.
And there was another similar one I had, which was something Atlantis.
Yes, it was. I think it was Escape from Atlantis or something like that.
That was good.
And it was another Waddington's, and it was pretty much very similar to Lost Valley of the Dinosaurs.
Yeah. Crossbows and Catapults. I love that.
Yeah, fantastic game.
I love that. In fact, there's in one of the antique shops by me, they've had a bagged. I've still got mine somewhere, but they had a bagged up collection of Crossbows and Catapults parts the last time I went in, and it was really tempting to just buy that and find some elastic bands and let loose.
Yeah.
I was always into Lego as well, though. So Lego was a big thing. And has remained such. Actually, Lego is quite odd because I was obviously into it as a kid, and then as I grew out of Lego, my father started to collect it. So in my mum and dad's loft, or my parents' loft, there's no more Lego than there ever was when I was a kid, and it's all my dad's.
Right.
So he's in his 80s and he still plays with Lego.
There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. That's a future that I'd be more than happy to look forward to.
I think so, because at some point my eyesight's going to go, so modelling just will stop, I imagine. So if I need to take up something else, I imagine it'll be Lego.
Yeah. No, I could be down with that. So I mean, obviously Zoids would have factored into childhood play. Transformers you mentioned, because I know you mentioned about G1 Transformers in there. Did anything else like kind of filter in? I know you mentioned going to a toy shop to see Mumra. So I never had any Thundercats.
I like the show. I never had any Thundercats. Predominantly as a kid, I would switch between playing with Zoids or Transformers, and that was it. I did love when Battle Beasts came out. I thought they were great. I really thought they were good. And I remember playing with Battle Beasts with Castle Grayskull and Snake Mountain, because I thought the aesthetic was very similar. And whatever the one is that's really difficult to get now, the Dungeons and Dragon ones, Fortress of Fangs, whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah, I remember I had that as well. So the Battle Beast went on that great. But yeah, it tend to switch between Zoids and Transformers. I can't think of anything else. That was probably it. But I spent.
So, what were the Masters of the Universe in there then? Because you mentioned.
Yeah, so they would have been earlier, wouldn't they? They would. When were Masters of the Universe? 83-ish, 4 maybe.
He-Man, yeah, 82. He-Man dropped.
Yeah. So it probably went. And I mean, I remember getting. I suppose the first Zoids I ever had, in hindsight, would have been. We went to Jolly Green Giant when we were on holiday in Scotland visiting my family, and I came out with a snow speeder that was in, obviously the Palitoy snow speeder with the sort of Hoth scene on the front.
Yeah,
two Zoids, and they were the Brontozoid and the Stegozoid, and then there seems in my memory there was my next Zoid after that was a Hellrunner. And I remember getting the Hellrunner, and they used to come with the little Marvel comic tie-in strips in the boxes, if you remember. And I remember being over the moon when I opened that little comic and there was the advert on the back, and seeing that these two other little Zoids that I'd got were part of the same range as this new toy that I'd just bought. And that was definitely where it started. Why I didn't figure out that they were the same range when they obviously were when you look at them.
Yeah.
But never mind. But yeah, I remember that quite vividly, and then that led on to the Zoids, and in my mind, quite shortly after that, I remember picking up the collected comics volume 1 of the Zoids, which had got all the stuff that was in Secret Wars beforehand, which is probably the really good artwork was in that first sort of the Secret Wars run when they were really trying to push the toys.
Yeah. Ah. So staying with that then, on the subject of comics, what's young Scott reading comic wise? What cartoons you watching, and any standout favourites?
Comics were Zoids and Transformers. Probably sort of like the Beano and the Dandy as well, every now and again, probably when I was on holiday. Standout TV programs, He-Man obviously.
Yeah.
Centurions I thought was great, but I could never afford any of the toys. I used to love Jason the Wheeled Warriors. I think it's probably a good job when I was young that I didn't realise there was a toy range that went with that. Ulysses as well, the French thing. Yeah, really like that. And as a kid, I always had a fondness for what's it called? The Japanese anime. Is it Defenders of the Galaxy? No, what was it? The one with the blue spaceship. My mind's gone blank. Happens when you get to a certain age, doesn't it?
Battle of the Planets.
Battle of the Planets. Yes, thank you. Yes, love that. And because it was the early 80s, I remember getting the first VHS player in the house, going down the video shop, doing it properly, not on Netflix. Going down the video shop, getting the videos, and in hindsight, it would appear that I loved anime when I was a kid, because I remember watching on almost on repeat Mazinga, and it's probably only in the last 3 or 4 years that I've realised what I was watching when I was, I don't know, 3 or 4. I remember really thinking that was amazing, and that led on to, I did really like that sort of Japanese reboot of Thunderbirds that they did, that was futuristic and anime. I remember that. I enjoyed that. And then obviously we did talk about this, I should mention it, which is Starfleet. Yeah. Love that. Love that to bits. Would sell quite a few Zoids to obtain some of the models from that. Certainly. Yeah. I know you said you've got Diex, but things like the spaceships, I thought they were fantastic design, and the way it was all put together. Love it. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I mean, Moderoid did the big Diex kit.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get one of those.
Yeah, I can highly recommend. Straight out the box, you can just build it, no glue, it'll snap together. There's a few, I think there's water slides in there, or you can use stickers. Excuse me. What I have seen people do that are far more talented than what I am, they've actually painted it and weathered it up.
Yeah, that's what I do.
And it looks absolutely spot on.
There was an episode where it fought, and I've got it on DVD. I've not that long watched it. It fought some kind of just big round silver ball thing, didn't it? in one of the episodes. I might have a go at scratch building that as well. So I've got both of them.
But it would be nice. I really still would like a nice, good scale model of the X-Bomber. That would be nice.
I like Makara's ship, the one that's the big catfish.
Yes, yeah.
Well, that's what it is. It's supposed to be a catfish, isn't it? I think.
It looks like some kind of fish. Yeah, it's with the two antennae and like the open mouth and all the
nice little. I remember spending so another thing I was very much into, unsurprisingly because of my love of Star Wars, was Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, and
I remember spending hours and hours drawing Vipers and the funny little fighters from Starfleet. I don't. It's almost like a horseshoe crab with the gun sticking underneath it.
Yes.
Just spending hours drawing stuff like that. But yeah, Battlestar Galactica was a big influence as well. I think I mentioned it. My ideal job, now I've got to where I am in life, I think my ideal job would have been, like many people, would have been one of the ILMers, making the sets, making the props, making the models.
Yeah.
Just the skill is just fabulous. I'm so pleased that a lot of modern stuff is going back to using the practicals now in production values. But yeah, I've got a lot of time for stuff like that.
It is. I think there's still films from back in the day, the 70s and 80s, which I think still look better than movies that are out today. I mean, I've recently been on a bit of an Alien and Predator kick, so I've been going through, working my way, watching them all, basically because I was inspired because I'd started watching the Alien Earth series.
I've only got through episode 1, so don't tell me anything.
I won't tell you anything. Or the only thing I probably would say is turn back before it's too late, but that's all I'm going to say. So I was inspired to go watch other stuff in the Alien Predator franchise just to, reassess and to, remind myself of how much better it is, or better it was. And even now, I think Aliens still stands up.
Absolutely brilliant.
Absolutely. If you was to show that film to someone now and say, when do you think that was made? I think they'd probably say within the past 10, 15 years. I don't think they'd realise that it is such an old film.
Yeah, it's very good. It is superbly done.
Yeah, so it is. Yeah, I think it is a good thing that movies head back to the practical side of effects.
But if we're still on where we started with this one, which was something I watched as a kid and crossing into movies, I've still got a real soft spot for Excalibur. You watched?
The John Borman film.
Sorry?
Yeah, John Borman film.
Yeah, and we touched on it. I'm a big fan of Adam Savage Tested YouTube channel. If you've not seen it and you like Excalibur, there's a couple of episodes where he comes over to Cornwall. They're fairly old now. He comes over to Cornwall and he works with, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but it was the guy that made the armor for Excalibur. And they make a full suit of armor, and that's fabulous to watch.
Yeah. I've been keeping my eye on the chat, and I said that I won't be bringing anything up, but Andy, Excelsior's Domain, put one up saying when he said separated at birth. I think so far everything you've said, I'm kind of like, I think it's like, it's almost like, there's just, it's just like looking in a mirror, in more ways than one.
I was just going to say.
But yeah, Excalibur that's probably in my top 20 of films is Excalibur. I can remember the first time I ever watched that. I was only a young kid, and it just left such a mark on me. I mean, I've always, even now, I'm a big history nut. I love history, any aspect of history, and I know that it's very romanticized and it's not historically accurate with regard, because Arthurian legend, at the time that Arthur lived, they wouldn't have had metal suits of armor and things like that. There would have been more like Roman soldiers rather than knights in shining armor kind of thing. But just the whole look and aesthetic.
It's just the suspending disbelief thing again, isn't it? If you're going to go watch a fantasy film, it is a stonkingly good fantasy film.
Yeah. And you've got so many heavy hitters in there. You know, you've got Patrick Stewart in there. You've got Liam Neeson. You've got Gabriel Byrne in there. You've got McNichol, Helen Mirren. You know, it's just like I could be here all night. It'd be another topic conversation with that, but we'll move on. So to round out this in the past section as it is, have we got a standout memory of a birthday or a Christmas toy, or both?
I can remember getting. I can remember the same Christmas I got Optimus Prime. I got Soundwave.
Right.
And I always liked Soundwave, and now I realise just because he was probably the coolest character in it, really, wasn't he? So yeah, loving the new Studio 86. I don't buy Transformers, but I might buy him. So that was quite good.
Right.
Christmas, I got the Lego monorail. That was pretty impressive.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
think we had Christmas dinner, and then everything got scraped off very quick off the dining table, and then the Lego just landed.
The table.
It was probably there till I went back to school at the start of New Year, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were pretty good Christmases. Yeah, they were good. Mind you, I bought myself a couple of years ago for Christmas. I bought myself the Star Wars Chronicles book, if you've ever seen that, which is big, thick, about this big, which is just full of studio images, models, the sets, everything. And I just geek off for hours over stuff like that. So that's pretty impressive. But yeah, good stuff. Yeah, Christmas.
How about a birthday? How about a birthday one? How about a birthday one? Jetfire. Yeah,
Jetfire. Because I can't say the Zoid, because I got my first Zoidzilla was, you know, when you used to go to the seaside and you just pester your parents for rubbish. Well, at the point where I got to that point, as I think as a lot of kids do, where mum and dad were saying, well, if you don't buy any rubbish while you're away, we'll buy you something that you'll actually enjoy when you get home. Well, that was how I got Zoidzilla. I seem to remember a wet caravan holiday, probably somewhere in Wales in the mid-80s.
Well, that's funny you mentioned that, because again, when we chatted last week, I showed you the photo, didn't I? I got my Zoidzilla in Cornwall. I got it from a toy mast in Truro, and it was in October. We used to go down we'd go down. I mean, it probably sounds like we were like super rich, but we weren't. We were, you know, it wasn't it was a modest upbringing, you know, kind of thing. But my dad fortunately had the kind of job where he could get good holidays, so we would go down Cornwall probably 4 or 5 times a year. I mean, it also helped that my elder sister lived down in Cornwall as well at the time, so it would double up as being able to visit her. And the last time we'd go down would be it'd be the last week in October, because it coincided with the school holidays. And it was always really depressing. I remember as a kid it being depressing in Cornwall in October, because tourists didn't go, nobody went. And this particular year, I think it was 85, wasn't it? I think we narrowed it down to, didn't we? It would have been 85. 80, would it be 84, 85?
Yeah.
And I got Zoidzilla. And I was on the table in the caravan building this Zoidzilla. And my dad was outside. He said, "Oh, come out for a photo." So we went out, and I'm holding this Zoidzilla's head like this, you know, like really proud of it, kind of thing. So that was a good memory for me. You mentioned Jetfire. Jetfire was another belter, was that, because that would have been 85, around about spring 85 time. And there was a school trip to North Yorkshire, and it was like they went on the Friday, came back on the Monday, and I think the cost of the trip was something like £25 or something like that. And I can remember saying to my parents, you know, do I have to go on this school trip? And they were like, well, why? What? I says, well, could I have a Transformer instead? And they were like, well, if that's what you want to do, I says, yes, I'll go with the Transformer all day. I've, you know, sod the school trip. So on the Friday, all the kids were there in the gear and kit ready to go off on this school trip, and they were all boarding the bus, and they were going, you're not coming, you're not coming. I'm just stood there thinking, I don't care. I'm getting a Transformer, the kind of thing. And I knew which one it were going to be, and I said, I want Jetfire. Can I get Jetfire? So I can remember that particular afternoon when school finished, my dad came to pick me up. And as we went out to the car, and I saw on the back seat of the car this big yellow Toy Master carrier bag, and it had Jetfire in it. And I was just like, so I just played with Jetfire all weekend. So they came back on Monday, giving it all, we've had, this, and I says, what did you do? And I was like, I just played with Jetfire. And they're like, you've got a Jetfire? I went, yeah, I've got a Jetfire. So that was, but it was just such a cool toy. Jetfire was a cool toy. It's ironic that it wasn't actually a Transformer.
I was just going to say, for me, there was a bit of disappointment that it didn't look anything like it should have done. But there we go.
No, but no, that's great. Is that fond memories. Right, what we're going to do is now then, we're going to go to our little Q&A session. So I'm going to address you directly, the viewers out there. If you want to ask Scott a question, fire them up now, and I will pop them on the screen, and so Scott can answer them. You can also ask me a question as well if you want, but I'm sure that whatever you would ask me, you've probably already heard from me anyway. So there we go. Let's open up the Q&A session, and let's wait for the questions to come in for you, Scott. And if they don't ask you any questions, I will certainly ask you some questions, because I have more questions, and they're all Zoid related. So I'll give them. We'll give them a couple of.
I did get a couple of props just to talk around some of the things we discussed last time.
Yeah, no, that's great. Is that? I will give a. Right then. So the first question is from Dave, also known as the Reanimator, and his question is, Scott, sorry to ask, but how old are you?
I'm 47.
There you go, Dave. 47.
So we're not twins.
No. Oh, that was Andy. That was on the separated at the birth thing. Well, that's right. Here we go. This one's a good one. This one's from Andy. This is the separated at birth chap, Andy Excelsior's Domain, who's also a big Starfleet fan as well. And he's asking, has anyone ever tried to build a non-Zoid Zoid based off the supporting ones in the comics?
So in the comics, there were a couple of mechs that were in it for a couple of panels. Famously was the Black Zoid, which was in the comics there were the Zoids, but the main characters in the comics were stranded humans. And because it was the time Terminator came out, the villain of the piece was essentially a Terminator. And he ends up, through a convoluted storyline, in an old Zoid warehouse, and he builds a Zoid to wreak revenge on the humans and the Zoids, and he builds this huge, essentially an even bigger Zoidzilla. I've not seen that. And I think that'd be quite difficult, because if you look at the artwork now, what the artists obviously did was they just created something. They didn't use Zoid parts, so you could probably get something that looked like it. Again, 3D printing, you could get it bang on, but yeah, no. And then there was a story where they found the last Zoid, the remains of one of the last Zoid cities, and that did have a Zoid in it for, again, only a panel, maybe a panel and a half, which looked like a Scorpio Zoid with the legs turned on upside down and a different color. So you could probably do that to a passable level using the Zoid parts. But then I suppose it's worth mentioning that, again, there are whole Facebook groups, Instagram pages dedicated to people who build new mecha in the style of Zoids using parts, cutting them up, actually using them as models, cutting them up, scratch building them, putting them all back together. And some of that stuff's quite impressive. And there's a subgroup in there of people who paint them specifically to match the OER colors, and there are people who make mock-up of box covers. So if you're interested in that, there's a whole thing there you can go looking for.
So I'll just quickly ask this one because a couple have come up since while we've been chatting about that one. But so just from a basic kit point of view, so the Zoid kits as they come out of the box, as it were, are the parts generally interchangeable that you could make a variation or something different?
That was the whole. I think that was the whole point, because if you've got any of the early, maybe not even the early ones actually, I probably don't know enough to say this for definite. A lot of the Japanese box art on the back has scratch built mashups of parts put together. So the hard points, for want of a better word, they tend to be the same size on the small Zoids and the large Zoids, putting aside everything I've talked about the variants. But if you've got all the Japanese, if you've got a collection from Japan, or you've got a collection from Singapore or wherever, you should theoretically be able to swap the parts out. And I think that was what they intended you to do with them originally, before they went down this route of putting a storyline to it all. So I know I have got a couple of boxes of Japanese Zoids that have got weird stuff on the back.
Right. Yeah, because as a kid, I used to kind of swap. Well, and Andy's brought the exactly what I was just about to say. I'd swap the cockpits over and things like that, or do different weapons variations, like on the Hell Runner or things like that, you know. But I do recall, I don't know how it happened, but they were actually the two last Zoids I ever got, and it was Zilon and Zor. They were the two very last Zoids I ever got. But for some reason, I ended up with an extra black, for want of a better word, red Zoid cockpit, because the Zilon had a black red Zoid cockpit for the head, didn't it? Ended up with another one, and I swapped that on Zor, because Zor comes with like a flat grey one. So I swapped that. So my Zor, kind of like the head was all black, if you will. But yeah, weapons and things like that I used to swap out. Right, we've got one here from Mario. And Mario's asking, hi Scott, how many Zoids do you think you have?
It's somewhere in the 300 plus range, I think.
Right.
I don't honestly know, because I have been moving house until I got here. I was moving house for the better part of 5 years, and I foolishly didn't stop collecting Zoids. So it has been probably the better part of 7 to 8 years since I had everything out. Right. As you often do as a collector, you just get it all out and look at it and then put it all away. I haven't done that for a long time. And to complicate things to complicate things further, that's probably how many Zoids I've got. But then how many whole Zoids have I got? I don't know. A lot less, I think. I've got a small army of Tarantulons and things like that, and some of the Trooper Zoids, I've got a lot of those. And some of the bigger ones I've got a few of. But what I found with collecting and looking for the variants is there always seems to be one piece I'm never certain where it's from. And so I end up building 3 or 4 of the same things till I finally get one that I can part match everything with. But I do desperately need to thin down the collection. Once I know what I've got, I only really want one of each, and then a lot of them are going to have to go.
Well, I mean, after Zoidzilla, Trooper Zoid is. I've got a real soft spot for Trooper Zoid. He's great.
You said that when we met. That's why I got him out.
Yeah. And either cockpit variation as well. I mean, I think I do actually ultimately prefer that variation.
That's the better cockpit, I think.
But I always call it the sit up and beg cockpit, because it's more, it's more upright kind of thing. That's just as good. But I just have one Trooper Zoid, but the one I've got, I can't remember if it's the right or the casing that goes around the motor, the casing. One of the sides is really, really yellow, so I keep my eye out for another side. Side isn't, yellow. But Trooper Zoid and the other small one I love is Hell Runner. Hell Runner's just a great looking, smaller Zoid. So anyway, right. So that's Scott's question. Let's see, where are we now? Right. It's not a question, but Andy's just mentioned something about wild Zoids.
I no idea. Yeah, Wild Zoids was a later range. I've had them where I've bought collections, but if I buy, as I said, if I buy a collection, they've got stuff in that's not OER. I tend to just get rid of it, which is how I ended up with a couple of the Zoids, which I wish I'd not sold, although they aren't OER. Things like the Deathsaurus and stuff like that. I just sold them on. In hindsight, I probably would have kept things like that, but never mind. But no, I don't ask me about Wild Zoids. I can't help you. Sorry. I think they're the more modern looking. They look more animalish or dinosaurish. They're not quite as mechanical looking. I mean, they're still cool, but I just can't go down that road.
Right. Sorry. He's made it. Andy was saying in the comics there were Wild Zoids. I think that's what he meant.
So there was later on there was a couple of things that you could call Wild Zoids. So later on there was a range. The last few larger Zoids were bigger wind-up Zoids, and again, the plot point around them was that they were introduced and they had no affinity to either side, and they just fight anything.
Right.
And I think also there was one where there were some really random creatures as well. That might be what your viewer means by Wild Zoids, but they weren't things you could buy.
Right. And then Andy's got us another one here, which I think you might be able to elaborate on for us, because we had this discussion the other week when we were chatting, and Andy's asked about, weren't the early Zoids known as Robostrucks in the States?
Yes. So Robostrucks were I'm going to get the year wrong because I'm not into it, but I think Robostrucks were a recolouring of either the 84 or the 85 line. So they got Krark. The initial line was Krark, Gorgon, Gore, a couple of the smaller ones, and I know that some of I've never seen any, but I've been told that some of the early Robostrucks, and it's similar to these, the artwork on the front, the actual photograph was an OER photograph with different font type and lettering.
Sorry, what was that? Sorry, so 84, 85
lines. 84, 80, yeah, something like that. And then they did quite well in the States. I've never had an interest, and they are really hard to get hold of as well. Even if you trawl eBay in America for the parts for those, getting them whole. And if you can get, I mentioned earlier about the Grail for a lot of people is a collection of unbuilt box Zoids. The Robostrucks ones are really pricey to get hold of.
Yeah. So that's the question I'm going to ask them, because again, it kind of enlightened me a little bit when we spoke briefly last week. And do you want to kind of just take us through the whole Zoid timeline and of the release of the toys, and what came where and that? Because
like I said earlier, so I've got a spreadsheet on this that I could just read the spreadsheet off, but I'll try and do it without doing that. They started in about 82 with these three Mechabonica Star Zeta Zoids. And then they became the first. So that was the Elephant Zoid, as was what we know as Terrazoid, and another one I can't remember now. I've been talking about Zoids too long. They bombed in Japan, didn't do very well in Spain. They rebranded them over here, added a few extras. So they added those first what were for many years were referred to as the Whiteheads. So the Zoids with that shell, that helmet, sorry, that cockpit on in white. So they were the Whiteheads, and that was really the first. I'm not too sure, if I'm being honest, if that was split over 1 year or 2 years, if that was split over 82 and 83.
Right.
That was definitely the first go. They took off over here, so they started recoloring and rebranding them in Japan, and then they started sending over the Japanese models over here as well, and that ran through. So the next wave was kind of your Red Horns, your Gorgon, Trooperzoid, Scorpiozoid, Slitherzoid, the early Red Zoids. Then you get on to late 84, 85, and now, if you think about it, you can see these on the back of the comics. You've got the issue that was the release that was Gore, Croc, Zark, then Croc, Prince of Darkness.
Yeah.
Then you got on to things like a bit later on, late 85, maybe 86, you got RedScavengerZoid, which is the big sort of slug.
Yeah.
I'm never too sure what actual animal that's supposed to be, but some sort of beetle slug thing with a trailer.
Yeah.
Zaber, which is as nearly as popular as the Liger, which is the black cat. Really good looking toy. He's quite sought after to get a whole one of him. And then that's really where they just from what I can see, the range just lost any interest with people.
Right.
And so then you got these guys. The last lot were these, which were the Powerzoids. So those are wind up with a bigger motor. And then the reason I put this out, I love this because it's a good story in corporate desperation. So he comes out. So Shield Liger, you putting aside that you don't like the cats, it's a great Zoid. So he's got quite nice looking box art. That is a single print on that box. And then at the same time, I think this is the rarest one. So the Liger's he's quite hard to get hold of.
Yeah.
But I have seen him in 20 odd years. I've seen the box and I've seen him a couple of times. That I only got about 12 months ago, that box.
Right.
And I've only ever had three of these. So this is spine fin. And in Japan, he was Dimitridon. So you'll see that this is a Japanese box imported with all the Japanese text on the back. And all they've done, I don't know where you'll see this, is you'll see that tear there. This is a sticker put on the front of the Japanese box.
Right.
So and he came with his instruction sheet, and it's the Japanese instruction sheet. So he's called Dimitri on the instruction sheet. It's not got spine fin. It's got Dimitrodon. Yeah. All the instructions are in Japanese. I've got 2 instruction sheets for him. One which is Dimitrodon, one which is a reprint with spine fin. So I'm not too sure what happened with that. Again, I've been told that they did similar with him, and you can find this box with stickers over on the Japanese box.
Right.
I've never seen any, but next to Mammoth, that one is probably the most precious bit of the collection as far as I'm concerned. And the Zoid I've got that came with this box, again, it's a slightly different red plastic if you put him next to one of the other ones. So I've got another one of him, which is the plastic is this one's Japanese. I've got a Singapore one. The plastic's a similar color to the Singapore red horns. So that's where they just die a death. And at that point, they disappear. The OER, that's the end of the OER. And then the Zoids start again in about 1990. But then the 2 absolute grail pieces, which I don't even consider to be worth trying to collect because I'm not even sure they exist. There's, in fact, on eBay at the minute, if anybody's feeling flush, on eBay at the minute, there is a 1987 Tomy catalogue going for about 78 quid.
Right.
In that catalogue, he's got the guy or the person that's selling it has got scans. He's got scans of the page that's got the Zoids on. But then I think the next page he's not scanned. And on the next page, I think is what is considered the most rare Zoid that perhaps never made it into shelves. So there was a recoloured Deathsaura. So Deathsaura is a bit funny looking, but amongst Zoid collectors, he's quite sought after. He's a bigger version of Godzilla, Tyrannosaurus Rex, T-Rex type thing. He's probably got about another 6 to 7 inches on the big fella here. He's huge. Really ugly hand design for some reason. And then, so he was in a TV advert in the UK. And if you go trawling on YouTube, you can find this TV advert with this fantastic looking Zoid in it. And as I said, I once owned one of the Japanese ones, didn't realize at the time that I assume he was a Japanese one. I hope to bits he wasn't a UK issue one. Got rid of him. But his sort of counterpart in that last launch, which must be 89, 88, 89, was Ultrasaurus. And Ultrasaurus is a massive Brontosaurus Zoid, huge. Even just getting one of the original Japanese ones now is a fortune. And he was a complete mutant red. In the catalogue, he's a complete mutant red recolor. And it's a photograph of an actual toy. Now, there is much debate in the community whether that toy ever actually got made and as to whether the photo in the catalogue is a prototype that they mocked up, painted, photographed, whether it's one of the Japanese ones repainted. over the years, there's been various people that have said, I've got one off eBay. The bits have popped up on eBay. I don't think anybody's ever said, or it's ever been agreed that categorically somebody's found one. So those are the two absolute holy grail pieces of an OER collection. And I don't know anybody that's ever got either of them and categorically can say this is definitely what this is. There's a lot of people who've recolored the Japanese Ultrasaurus because it looks so cool. And there was a rumor going around a couple of years ago, and I think it was probably just created in the community and it has got no basis in reality, that in the storyline at the end of the Black Zoid story arc, when Mammoth gets destroyed by a resurrected Redhorn, the idea was Mammoth would be rebuilt into this Ultrasaurus Red, but again, it could just be a story in the community. But those are the two. That's where it ends. Definitely ends there. If anybody's feeling flush, there's a great piece of Zoid memorabilia on eBay at the minute that I'm certainly not going to be bidding for. It's about 78 quid. And if you get it, take photos and send them over to me because I'd love to see that catalogue.
Right. Andy's fired another question in for us. Going back to that blue mammoth that you mentioned, he's just asking, was the blue mammoth ever released in the UK?
I don't know. It was certainly not released as a Zoid.
Right.
But in America, it was released by what they called Radio Shack. So you remember Tandy's in the UK. Tandy's was part of the Radio Shack group. And again, they sold it as, I can't remember what I've seen an American box with it. It's got Zoid in it somewhere, Blue Zoid or something. I'm never too sure if that was released over here in Tandy's.
Right.
So I've not seen one. I've never seen any photos of one. It could have been, I don't know. This is why I'm intrigued as to whether that story point in the comic was, presumably when they started doing the comic, the guys that were doing the drawings got given a load of Zoids and said, come up with a storyline around these. If they were given the blue one, and that's where it came from. I'd love to know little bits of the history like that. So no, I don't know. I don't think so. It was certainly released in America in blue, and it was certainly released in Japan. And you can get the American ones fairly cheap, but the mammoths, the tails tend to snap off the back.
Right. We've got a question from Gareth, and he said, you've mentioned Battle Beasts and Transformers. If you ever got to the end of your Zoids collection, what would you collect next?
That's a good question. I think my Battle Beast collection, I'll be happy when I've got to the point where I had what I had as a kid. But as a collector, I'll probably get to that point and then carry on going. So I hope I don't reach that. I've got a soft spot for Transformers. I've always got, and especially as I've said, Devastator, and the G1 stuff. I could, if time and money was no object, a G1 collection of masterpiece scale of Transformers would certainly be on the cards, I think. Right. But yeah, I haven't got the time or the money for that, so hopefully I won't reach that point.
No. Andy's just updated us, and he said that there's a Tandy catalogue for Mammoth on eBay now.
Oh, I'll put a link in there. I want to see how much that goes for.
Yeah. So pop us a link in the chat, and I'll send it over to.
I should say if anybody's, I'm obviously a bit of a nerd with this, but there are bits I am after, and I'm quite happy to swap parts. And I've tried to do this with people in the past. If if people have got Zoid collections and they want a certain bit, I'm happy for people to reach out, but I will come straight back and say, I can give you the bit you want, but I couldn't just send you a random bit. I'd want to know if it was for a Japanese or a Singapore, and I'm quite happy to. Yeah. I found people on eBay who've got, you can see they've got big boxes full of, I've got things like this all over the place. So that box, that's just one of the boxes of grey bits for Singapore variant Crocs. Right. And I've got that for pretty much everything. And some of them are boxes like that. Some of them are the big 60-litre really useful boxes just full of parts for the big Zoids. I'm quite happy to swap parts if anybody, and I'm quite happy to chat to anybody else about it as well.
Right. No, good stuff. Right. Well, there's no more questions in the chat now. I think we've may have exhausted that. I'm just going to say you'd mentioned earlier that you'd brought a couple of bits out for a bit of a show and tell.
Yeah, well, one of them was that. One of them was those boxes, because I knew you'd want to see that. I bought the Trooper Zoid. What else have I got here that we can talk about? No, I think that's it. Sorry.
That's it. No, that's fine. That's not a problem at all. Well, then, that being the case, then, is there a question you'd like to ask me?
Right. This is quite a tough one, isn't it? I need to go. I should have gone back and watched some of your earlier episodes to see what people ask. So I'm going to ask something really childish, and I'm not going to apologise for it. In a stand-up fight,
right,
who would win at relative scale? I'm going to add. So not level pegging, Grimlock or Zoidzilla. At scale. So I reckon Zoidzilla's probably got the height advantage.
Right.
Even though he's a big bot.
Okay. Right. I will have a think about that. While I'm thinking about that, let's go to a commercial break, shall we?
Super.
You can imagine the prehistoric past and the distant future coming together in one creation. Zoids. You can pretend that they're creatures from the age of dinosaurs, or that they're futuristic monster machines. Each Zoid requires assembly, and though their appearance is strange, you can wind them up and let them move freely about your home. Zoids. Each is sold separately. They're made by Tomy.
War of the Zoids. Throughout the universe, newly created mutant Zoids are swelling the ranks of the Red Zoid armies. Cruel and fearless, they will challenge the Blue Zoids in heroic combat. This is Total War, the War of the Zoids. Monster machines with the power to move, only from Tomy. The time has come for the Zoids. The giant Zerk is complete. Other Zoids are being assembled and primed with power. They must compete for survival. Zoid against Zoid. But whichever Zoid wins this time, there are others waiting. Zoids. Monster machines with the power to move. Only from Tomy.
And we're back.
There is, on eBay, a Zoid's Mammoth instruction sheet, branded Tandy. That's a great piece.
Oh, you found it, yeah?
I found that. I've not found the kit. I found...
You found the
I found
thing,
some
bit. But, no, it's good stuff. Good stuff. Right, question. But before I answer that question, I just wanted to ask, and it's relevant, actually, to the advert, the last advert that we saw.
I didn't see that, whatever that was. Hang on.
Oh, no, it was just... I just did a selection of Zoid toy adverts.
Right.
One of them, in the last advert that was on there, it's a Zoid that's always puzzled me because it looks like it has no business being in the Zoid toy line. And that's the one that's basically a block that you put batteries in and it's got wheels and it just goes backwards and forwards.
Yeah, so there were two of them. They were called Power Zoids. They're in the 83. So they realise that they can sell Zoids. They get these white heads and they repackage them. And they put them out. And then for some reason with them, they also put in these two random Zoids. One is the block that you're talking about, which is Tank Power Zoid. And then his rival that also ran on batteries was Serpent Zoid, I think. I might have got the name wrong.
Is it the one with the
big
two
wheels?
big
Big wheels.
Yeah.
There are so many variants of him. Oh, just don't even go down that rabbit hole. He comes with different colour wheels, depending on just so many variants. I think probably everything I said about where they were manufactured, they probably made those two somewhere else as well. So I think the idea there was that somebody at Tomy must have gone, oh, blimey, Transformers are selling really well.
Yeah.
How can we shoehorn a Transformerish vehicle thing into this range? Because those are the only two that look like that. And then they never, ever again reappear.
Right. No.
And Tank's got a real problem now in that the rubber of the wheels is just disintegrating. And I think there's definitely a case there for some sort of rubber resin printed replacement jobs.
Yeah.
I've just remembered something else I wanted to tell you, actually. Rubber replacement jobs. And then the Serpent Zoid is really well sought after, really highly sought after. And in particular, because he was so top heavy, Part of the design is a tiny little plastic peg that you stick under one end when he's stationary to stop him just falling backwards and forwards. And he never comes with that peg. And I know there's somebody on eBay that does, I think they're probably 3D printed copies, but Scorpio Zoids are quite hard to get hold of. They're great Zoids. As with all of them, if you get them and they don't work, you can, if you're really careful, take them apart, recondition the engines and put them back together so they work. But yeah, they're quite difficult. Before we carry on, you asked me last time, does anybody make copies of the plugs, the little caps?
Yes.
I see somebody's doing it on eBay. I hadn't seen that until last time we spoke, and I only saw that the other day. Don't know if they're any good. Be very interested to see what they're like.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. Right then, your question. Deathmatch, Zoidzilla versus Grimlock at relative scales, as you say. Right, okay. I would be tempted to just fire straight in and say Grimlock without even thinking about it, because Grimlock is my favourite Transformer. Character is my favourite character Transformer, because as a kid, what more do you want? It's a dinosaur, it's a robot, it's just like, it covers all the bases. However, being impartial about these things, and Andy's mentioned it in the comments, which I would have gone straight there to it. If Grimlock was to take out the android pilot, then that's it. Game over, kind of thing, yeah? However, if we just take that out of the equation and pretend that that's not a factor, I think you have to consider just the sheer firepower that Zoidzilla's carrying with him, yeah? He's got a lot of firepower there. There's a lot of brute strength. I mean, Grimlock is a brute of a Transformer and a character. He's probably, I'd say, he's probably the only Transformer that could beat Optimus and Megatron, straight out, in a fight. I mean, I'm not talking about the Titans and things like that, the Metroplexes and Fort Max and things like that. But if Grimlock could get in close quarters with Zoidzilla, I think I think Grimlock would win if he got in close quarters and was able to get his hands on him and start ripping stuff and, with the sword, his Energo sword and stuff like that. But I think the trick would be getting close to Zoidzilla because of the firepower that he's carrying with him.
When I started collecting Zoids when I was a kid, I never thought in my late 40s I'd end up on a TV screen having this debate with somebody else. Completely random.
Who knew? Who knew? I mean, life is this interesting way of sending us places that we don't expect. But so, yeah, I think I don't really want to give it to either one. I think it would be a case of it would depend. I think if Grimlock could get in close quarters with him, I think it would be a case of rip to shreds, slice an arm off it, crush a weapon, and then get in the cockpit, kill the android, game over. But I think the trick would be getting close to Zoidzilla, because Zoidzilla isn't particularly fast. He's quite laborious, he's slow paced and things like that. But he has this immense firepower that he's carrying, and I think the trick would be getting into close quarters with him. So if Zoidzilla could keep Grimlock at a distance, I think Zoidzilla could probably pick him off with the sheer firepower.
I think your argument's probably sound. I'm not going to disagree with you. Because the only counter I'd say is it took 50-odd episodes of the comic before anybody managed to bring Zoidzilla down.
Right.
And he obviously has got this huge weakness. He's got a massive canopy at the top. But,
yeah.
Fascinating.
It's also affected the armor as well. He's got such armor as well. To take all the blaster shots and things. So I think that would be my take on it. If close quarters, Grimlock, but he'd have to get in close quarters. Zoidzilla would probably keep him at a distance just with sheer firepower. So yeah, it's kind of like it's a similar opinion because I remember having the same debate with someone about RoboCop versus Terminator. Yeah. And my take on that was that Terminator has the agility and the speed, and if he could keep RoboCop at a distance, he could probably pick him off. But if RoboCop managed to be able to get his hands on the Terminator, it'd just rip him to pieces. Yeah. So it's it's that's fine. What does the chat say? Let's have a look.
Deathmatch. I like this.
Yeah, let's see what the. So yeah, Andy had mentioned the point that I did about all Grimlock has to do is to kill the android. He also mentioned that Grimlock took chunks off Trypticon.
What was that in?
That was in one of the comics.
Is that one of the comics?
I think it was one of the comics. I think. He also mentioned that Zoidzilla's got no point defense and no agility worth a damn. But like I say, he's got the firepower, so he can keep stuff at a distance. Excelsior's domain saying it's already been done. Is that the Zoidzilla versus Grimlock? Who knows? And then Gareth said, all Grimlock has to do is to give Zoidzilla's tail a quick pull and it will break off, then Zoidzilla will be able to stand. Yeah, the toy, the battle of the toys. Yeah, Transformers UK comic. What? That's the Grimlock. Yeah, Grimlock versus Trypticon. Yeah. So right. So yeah, that's what. So would you agree with your?
Yeah. I'd agree. I mean, as much as I love the comic, some of the storylines were bizarre about relatively. How strong various Zoids were against each other and things like that. Because I mean, there's some great artwork of Krark fighting Zilla, wasn't there? And there was, he could just easily beaten him because he was higher. He got, have the high ground and all that. It would have just worked. But yeah, I agree. I agree with your argument.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the enduring images I have from childhood with regards to Zoids was on the back of the Zoidzilla box. And that's where Zoidzilla is just holding a Hell Runner. Yeah, that one, yeah. And I always, as a kid playing with them, I always used to replicate that and have my Zoidzilla.
The artists obviously realised quite quickly that was easily achievable and they could draw it, so you can see why it became so iconic. Yeah.
So, yeah, there we go. Right, we're at the end there with that, Scott.
Right,
that's... We've survived. We have survived. We've enjoyed.
No, that's been as much fun as I thought it would be. That's been good fun.
Yeah, I'm hoping that people have enjoyed that. I've most certainly enjoyed it, and it's been great for me because it's proved to me that I think going forward that I can carry this collector's archive as a live thing rather than a pre-recorded thing. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm going to put this in because it is quite a good point, actually. Andy's mentioned, how would Zoidzilla even grab Hellrunner in the first place? Maybe Hellrunner jumped off a cliff and he just happened to catch him. But anyway. So, right. If you'd like to just remind people where they can find you on the socials.
I have to check myself as well. Hang on. It's RedScavengerZoid on Instagram and Lufthor on Facebook. But Instagram's the best place. That's where I do make. If there's anything posted on Facebook, it's probably because it's just linked to Instagram. So just
right. So your Instagram's the main place.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And that's it. So, Scott, thank you very, very much indeed for coming on and chatting with me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I could probably go another 2 or 3 hours with you talking Zoids, but I'm aware of what time it is, and I'm aware that it's like keeping people that are watching as well. They'll have things to do on that. It's towards the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have got this bizarre idea that it would be great to get people together at some point who collect Zoids. I've got this crazy vision of the back room of a pub somewhere covered in plastic, with everybody trying to swap bits and stories and boxes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I'm open to a more in-depth, stream like this, where we just talk solely about the Zoids, because there is so much that I do want to ask and want to know about as well myself. More, even getting down to more than the manufacturing side and especially the variants and things and molding differences. All that stuff does fascinate me. But like I say, it's a topic for another day. So
yep.
once again, Scott, I will say thank you very much indeed. I appreciate you coming on and chatting with us, and hopefully we'll speak again real soon.
Yeah, super. It's been great fun. Thank you very much.
All the best, and you take care, sir.
Take care.
Thank you for watching the Collector's Ark live. To ensure you never miss any of our content, please select the like, subscribe, and notification icons. Vault Keeper EdD.